Hi there, welcome to Numbers Don't Lie. I'm Brad Pinzer.
And I'm Janelle Sikora. Welcome to another episode. We are super excited to have Lexie Maitland with us today. Hey, Lexie.
Hello, I'm excited to be on. Thank you guys for having me.
You're welcome. And, Lexie's a very special guest because I just have to brag for a second. She is my daughter, and I kind of think she's pretty cool. And the whole reason that we invited Lexie to be on here is because she is a Gen Z business owner. And as you guys know who are listening, one of the things that we do is we like to have episodes once in a while where we feature business owners because we like to pick their brains and really get inside their minds in terms of what they think accountants do and what how they view accountants in terms of the impact that they can have on their business and what they look for in an accountant. So because I know Lexie as well as I do, I
Mhm.
also know that there are two three-letter words that will send her to the moon. One of them is tax, and the other is IRS. Right, Lex?
You nailed it. You nailed it.
So
Yep.
before,
That explains me to a T.
yep. And so before we get too into it, do you want to give our listeners a little bit of background about your business and what you do?
Yeah, of course. So a little like my background in a nutshell. So I attended the University of Tampa, got my bachelor's of science in exercise physiology, and during that time, I picked up like a little gig when I was in college, very virtual, and I still actually work for that company very part time today, doing some social media work. But my main job right now is I am an online coach for Team Pro Physique. So it's a company that is based out of Florida, although all of the coaches on the team, we are considered independent contractors. So it's
Mhm.
essentially like I kind of do my own thing under the company. So I actually started that when I was a junior at University of Tampa. Started very part time, obviously, and then I was in a position very thankful and grateful for this after I graduated, where I kind of just eased into it full time. So that's what I still do to this day, and that keeps me extremely busy. I do manage quite a big load of clients, but I love it, and yeah, wouldn't have it any other way. But it basically, like I mentioned, I do work under a company, but it's like I'm an independent contractor, so I am a coach, and I can kind of manage how I coach my clients. But it is all online based. It is all virtual. I have clients as far as Australia. I have a couple. I think I have two in Singapore, but I also have some that are as close as like 10 minutes away from me. So they're a little. I have clients in lots of different areas of the world. So that is my main source of revenue, and then I have right now today I have two other like very part time independent contractor gigs as well. It's
Mhm.
just some supplemental income.
So when you have multiple sources of income and when you have your LLC, um, one of the things that they don't teach you in college is the fact that you have to proactively pay taxes on this stuff, which
Right.
means when you have an LLC and multiple sources of income that come into that, which means usually you would need some help, an accountant, right? So
Yes.
talk to us about that. Um, tell us what was important to you when you were looking for the accountant that you work with.
Yeah, so I was so naive. I remember I was quite upset when I like started learning all this stuff because I was like, gosh, like they don't teach you any of this in high school or college, but as my mom told me, most people are not just graduating and usually like they're usually not 1099 independent contractor based, but so the biggest thing for me when it came to like how I found my accountant that I work with now is I actually found him via word of mouth from somebody I really trusted. So one of a guy that owns a business near me who I trust him a ton. He's kind of like I don't want to say he's like my dad's age. I trust him a ton, and he's always been very good to me. So he referred me to this accountant. So word of mouth from him was very important. And then I talked to this accountant, and he just seemed very like straightforward, no BS. And I think the word of mouth and knowing that he had gotten such a good reputation from this person that referred me, that was really important to me. But he was also really helpful when explaining to me kind of how I needed to set up an LLC in order to file quarterly and how I needed to set up my business account. And he also gave me some insight into like, as a business owner, things I could write off that I had no idea that I could write off. And so he kind of taught me to keep track of that. And so that kind of blew my mind right off the get go because, like, I didn't know any of that before talking with him. So that's kind of what attracted me to him was first the word of mouth. And then ever since then, he's just been very helpful and very, very good at what he does for me.
So talk to us a little bit about communication. So in our generation, which is Gen X, we would pick up the phone and we would just call people. However, or a little bit later on, we would email people, right? So your generation is a little different. What is your preferred method of communication?
Well, this is a tough question because I actually feel like I'm so different compared to my generation. Like, I get very, like, I'm probably like you guys. I get kind of annoyed with some of the things my generation does. But mom knows this about me. I love to talk on the phone. I do, but I don't like when people just call me randomly because it like my mind automatically goes to like the worst possible case scenario. So I would say like for me personally with my job and also how I communicate with the majority of my clients is via email. And I find that that is my preferred communication method with like clients or like even my accountant. I love to be able to email, although like we do text sometimes, but I would say email is my preferred way of communicating. But text is like a good, easy, like quick if I need like a really quick response.
So I have a question. Can you recall when prior to having this accountant working with you, like
Mhm.
what your thought was of an accountant and CPAs and that kind of thing? And how has it changed now that you've gone through this experience?
Yeah, so I can say like my first vivid memory of an accountant was I don't remember if it was with my mom or my dad, but regardless, it doesn't really matter who I was with. It was in their accountant's office. This was back in St. Louis, but I just remember being a young kid and going in there and like he literally had this, I don't even know what you would call it, but he would like type things up and it would print out
10
these
key,
receipts. What?
a 10 key, a 10
Yeah,
key.
okay, a 10 key. And I remember there was this like mile long receipt going through his office. Like that is the first memory I have of this accountant. And so that's kind of I don't know, that was my only experience with them. And then I did have a couple of like I remember my first two jobs. Well, I remember like my first job in high school. I remember my dad more so kind of helped me to take care of like the taxes with that. So I really didn't have to do much. And then it was like when I graduated college, then that's when I was kind of forced to like reach out for like and find my own accountant. But that's my first memory of an accountant was the guy that my parents took me to the office of. And I was just trailing along. It wasn't like I was like doing anything with my own taxes at the time. I was just kind of there with them.
Right? But you get this like idea formed in your head, right? That's what accountants do. That's what they all do. You should walk into any accountant's office and see them banging away on a 10 key with, 14 miles of tape all
Oh,
over the floor and
yes.
red pens.
And I don't think I mentioned the best part now that this comes to me, and I think my mom probably remembers this. I remember another memory of that accountant, which I'm sure he was a great accountant. This is not me saying he wasn't, but I remember I think I was with you, mom, and we had like gone out to the car leaving his office. And I want to say he like ran after us outside and is like flagging mom down. And he was just very panicked and like had this sense of urgency. So I always just kind of thought of accountants as like being these very number driven people who are very like on edge and tedious with everything they do. So yeah.
That's great.
Well, we're working to change the narrative on that.
Hmm.
Let me ask you another question. So another thing that we talk with a lot of our firms about is the importance of being able to speak in layman's terms, right? Because
Hmm.
in your work, what you do, you're training bikini bodybuilders to compete most of the time. You don't necessarily understand the tech talk behind tax, nor do you want to. How important is it for your accountant to be able to speak to you in your terms so that you can understand.
Oh, so important, because like there's been times where I like I mean, I'd be lying if I said I had this adulting thing figured out, but I feel like I like to think I'm very level-headed and that I'm smart with most things, but there's been times like where my accountant, he does a great job for the most part of like explaining things to me, but there's been times where like he'll say something and like this is on me, but I'll almost feel like, okay, I should know what he's talking about, and I'll like be afraid to actually ask because I don't want to sound silly or stupid. But so I think that's very important, because otherwise you feel overwhelmed, you feel confused. And, I know I've had to come to you a couple times, Mom, thank goodness, like you do what you do, and, but ask you certain questions. Cause like I'm almost too afraid to ask my accountant, just in fear that I'm going to be looked at as just silly or stupid for not knowing what the certain lingo means.
That's such a good point. And it's such a good point because actually, I was having this conversation with a firm yesterday. Actually, no, I was giving a webinar yesterday. And one of the things that I said was, people are not going to ask you questions if they think they're going to look dumb. And the crazy thing is, accountants are experts, and we should never feel like they're going to think we're dumb because we ask a question. And they don't think that. Honestly, I've never worked with an accountant who's like, "Oh my god, I can't believe that person asked that question." So, but for us as non-accountants, right? We're like, "Oh, I don't know, I want to ask that question because they're going to think I'm really stupid." Because I'm a business owner, I'm not supposed to be stupid, right? So you bring
Mm-hmm.
up a really good point, and I think that that is on accountants to make sure that they make their clients feel very comfortable and that they say up front, "Hey, listen, I know some people are afraid to ask certain questions because you might think I'm going to think you're dumb. You're not dumb. Ask away. I don't care how basic it is." I think just something as simple as that might
Yeah.
take the conversation to another level.
I think so
Yeah,
too. And like I mean, that's a great point, because I always tell, like in my field, I always tell my clients the same things, because like sometimes I realize, okay, I've been doing this for so long where I may say something that's second nature to myself, and it may not be second nature to them, and I never want them to feel like they can't ask a question or that they're going to sound stupid. So it's like it's funny to like put myself now in the opposite, like being on the opposite side of things. But yeah, I think it's something that any good, maybe like whether you're a coach like myself or an accountant, to just set that expectation with the client right off the get-go, I think is just to establish that, like that level of comfort.
yeah, and like just use like when they in any business, but particularly with accounting firms, using insider language and acronyms particularly, and then you're sitting there trying to what do those letters stand for, and you're not present, you're preoccupied, and so you're it's really important for sure. Let me
Yeah.
ask you another question. So having gone through, working with an accountant and having your business and all the success that you had, how important has it been to have that advisor with you, helping you, grow your business? And what would it be like if you didn't have that? Like how would you feel?
Oh
You
gosh,
know?
it's been so immensely helpful, and I think anybody who's very close to me knows, like I am somebody, I'm probably, like, you could consider me a frugal person. I don't like just spend money mindlessly, but like I will always say I will 1000% pay for an accountant, because it's peace of mind for me. It's peace of mind for me, and it just takes like it takes the stress out of things for me, for like, 'cause I don't want to say I'm not a numbers person, but I'm not as numbers oriented as accountants, and I don't want to have to waste my time figuring out my own taxes and stressing about that. And because that's going to just take away time from me being able to actually do my job. So it's been so helpful and so important for me to have that accountant, just because it's like it does reduce the stress on my end to know I'm legally paying what I need to pay, and just to make sure it's all being done right too. So that's been like, that is a non-negotiable. I can't imagine not having an accountant to help me through all of this.
And so thank you. And so you had other accountants over the course of your business, correct? You had said,
No, I
or
think
is it
he's the only one,
just the
right?
one?
Well, yeah, so I've only had the one that I have, because when I was kind of in that like phase of like still at the very late stages of college, not quite graduated, I remember my dad had just kind of grandfathered me into like working with his accountant. And I remember the first time I saw, like, my dad sent me the tax forms that I needed to sign some things, I was like, I was so like taken back because it was the first time I like had seen how much I had to owe, and I was like so upset about that. And then I remember, I think I had talked with my mom, and I think she had told me, she's like, Lexie, I think you should probably maybe search for somebody new who's a little bit closer to you, or somebody who understands like the independent contractor 1099 side of things, because she was like, there's some things you could probably be writing off that this other accountant wasn't taking into account. So that's when I found my current accountant, and I mean, I've been with him for like 4 years now.
That's great. Because I was going to ask if there's like specialize in your particular type of business. So you just
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
answered
I,
that
I
there.
mean, I don't know. I'm sure there is, because I wouldn't say like my accountant now, he doesn't specialize in like my industry, but I do know some people that like I work with and people in my industry that have like their accountant, and they'll just refer that person, out to other people who do the same occupation. But yeah, I mean, I'm so grateful for part of the reason why, going back to your question a second ago about the accountant like that I have now, something I'm so grateful for is the fact that like he did talk to me about setting up an LLC, setting up my business banking account, and being able to file quarterly, because that just makes the hit a little bit easier than having to just pay all of it, come April. So that's something I would have never known on my own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's super important. And like in the US, most people don't know it's a pay-as-you-go system for taxes. So if you have a W-2 job, you wouldn't know that because they just take it out every pay period, right? But when you own
Mm-hmm.
a business, you have to pay estimated quarterly taxes. There's just no other, way about it when you've got an LLC like that. So um, the other thing, you've mentioned a couple of things like, it just takes the stress off you. You've got this peace of mind. So I'm curious. One of the things that we work with accounting firms on is their messaging, because they really need to stand out and differentiate themselves and understand the mind of the client that they're targeting. So, talk to me a little bit about um, you, like as a business owner, the type of business owner that you are. What's your biggest fear as it relates to your business?
Yeah, so and I like, this is a very easy, obvious answer for me because I've always had this fear. So my business is very much so, I wouldn't say like it's commission based, but it kind of is. Like I I don't get PTO. Like I only make money if I work, and also I only make money with the clients I bring in, right? So it's always been a fear of mine, like, oh my God, what if one month I lose a ton of clients and like, take a pay cut for one month? And like I've always had those fears of just like having like, coming off of a really good month money wise, and then the next month it being the complete opposite, or just like me losing all my clients overnight, which, when I say it out loud, that sounds so silly, but I think it's like, it's a valid thought. So that's always kind of been my main fear. And, sometimes, and I'm sure every business owner kind of has this thought of like, where sometimes you almost think like, okay, maybe it would just be nice to have like a very stable, quote unquote, comfortable job where I'm making just like a very fixed income every month, right? It like sometimes I have those thoughts, but then, because I'm like, oh, it would save my stress of not always like worrying every month. But I also love the opportunity to be able to not have a fixed amount income every month, and being able to do a little bit better and better and better, and to challenge myself in that way. So it comes with its pros and cons, but that's always probably been my main fear.
Yeah, I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yes, exactly. That's not what I thought you were going to say. I actually thought you were going to say what a lot of people say, which is my biggest fear is I don't look good in orange. I don't want to wear an orange jumpsuit.
Oh, oh my God. Okay, well that is also sometimes a fear of mine, and I do always, I think I've asked my mom this a couple of times. I'm like, all right, as long as like just please tell me that I'm not going to go to jail from this like silly little like thing with the IRS. But yeah, and that's part of why I think like having an accountant has been so valuable for me too, because it's like it does make me feel a little bit better about like knowing I'm legally doing what I need to be doing. And but yeah, that is another, I guess, fear would be the orange jumpsuit for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think I don't
And that's legit, right? It's scary.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's scary to think about that. like honestly though, I think about it all the time about how I'm sure like there are people out there that like naively don't even pay taxes, but like they don't even know. And it's like I wish there was something I could do to change like the school systems and what you're being taught, because it's just it makes me so upset that we are not taught the basics of this in school, and how it's kind of just like, all right, you're out on your own, and then like good luck, you figure it out, you know. It's that has always really kind of bothered me.
Mm-hmm.
Too much theory, not enough practical work.
Right,
For
right,
sure.
right. How to
Yes.
be an adult 101. When you get out, you have to pay taxes, and here's how it works. Yeah, you learn that sometimes the hard way. So, what would your advice be? So, there are what 33 million small business owners in the U.S. And it's growing, and small business is the backbone of America. And there are a lot of Gen Z business owners out there, whether they are, they have multiple 1099s that are collected under an LLC, whether they own a retail storefront, whatever it is that they do. What would you advise someone to do who is starting a business, or maybe coming out of college and they've got several different streams of income through, multiple contractor type positions? What would your advice be to someone like that, another Gen Z business owner?
Yeah, so, okay, so I think if I had to narrow it down to two things, thinking of where I was at in that time of my life coming out of college, I would say first things first, like get an accountant. Even if you don't feel like you have the money to spend on one, I just feel like it's so valuable, and it's like peace of mind. And honestly, like you can find an accountant, a good accountant that's not that expensive. But I think that's important, and I would not have done it any other way. And then I think the other thing is just save. You know, I think that provides, especially when you're younger, that provides a little bit of like that kind of comfort, or a little bit of cushion just to fall back on in case. Because I see, and this could also just be the area that I live in. I feel like the Tampa areas, there's a lot of this that goes on, but you see a lot of like young, like Gen Z, millennials, living very lavish lifestyles. And I'm not trying to jump in and like, make judgments or anything, but I do feel like a lot of people get caught up in like, okay, I'm a young business owner. I want to look like I make a lot of money. And then they, buy all these material goods. Therefore, like, but they're also barely making enough to make ends meet. So I think saving, especially in those early stages, is nice. At least that's kind of the thought process I've always had. So that way I can save now. So that way I can kind of buy and provide myself a little bit more flexibility, far in the future.
I love it. So I want to go back to something that you said a second ago. You said about invest in an accountant. Do you see paying for an accountant as an investment, or do you see it as kind of a necessary evil type of an expense? I'm curious about that.
Oh, well, for mine in particular, I would 1000% say I see him as investment, because he also does help me a little bit with some investments. So that I definitely see it as an investment. And kind of going back to what I said a little while ago, I mean, by having an accountant, I gain time. Ooh, sorry, I just like flipped my computer. I gain. Sorry, I was talking with my hands too much. I gain time back essentially from not having to worry about like my all the numbers and taxes stuff. So like that's time I get back to do my job. So I definitely look at him as an investment 1000%. I mean, I could understand how maybe at first you may look at it as kind of a necessary evil, but I don't look at it in that realm at all.
I love what you just
Mm-hmm.
said, that it gives you time back to focus on your job, because that's a key message. If you've got a really good CPA or accountant, that's the whole point. You invest in them because your time is worth so much, and your passion and your energy is worth so much, and you need all that to grow your business and do a good job. You need to have someone that you can trust, who's looking out on all of the financial stuff that's going on in your business, and can help you make decisions and pull you in when you need to be, pulled in, or let you know of certain things that you need to do or take advantage of.
1000%. Yeah. And I've always like, I've always grown up listening. Well, I don't say grown up, but like in the past like 5 years, I've always listened to podcasts from other business owners, and I always hear them say, when they first start out, one of the hardest things is being able to like almost refer out, like hire a maybe not hire other people, but like let other people help you. And I think that's hard for a lot of people who are owning their own business. They want to try to do everything themselves, but there does come a point where you can do that, but then you're spread too thin and you're not like, it hurts you in the long term. So it's nice to just be able to like get some time back, not having to worry about my own taxes and letting somebody else do that.
Yeah, I mean, being able to delegate is critical, absolutely, and it's difficult. I mean, it's difficult because you're like, well, I can just do it myself. It'll just take me 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, But those minutes add up, and it's so much better when you can let somebody else do it, so that you can free up your time. And an accountant is a perfect example of something that should be delegated, and they provide incredible insight and help you become more successful in in addition to freeing up your time and all that kind of stuff. And it sounds like your accountants has really been tremendous help.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I feel like there is strength in numbers. I know. I mean, I would definitely consider I'm a very independent person, but I recognize and realize I can't do it all. I can't do it all, and I need other people to sometimes, help.
Yeah. So I have one last question for you. Talk to us a little bit about your dreams. What are your dreams for your business? Where do you want to go with it?
This is a good question because I feel like this changes a lot for me. I used to be one of those people that
Involves.
I used to be one of these people that had, and I think we all have probably been in this position before, especially like when you're, before you even like graduate high school or even college, like you have this kind of idea of like, all right, in 5 years, I want to be here. 10 years, I want to be here. And I very much so used to be that way. And I feel like now though, I mean, I think it's great to have goals, don't get me wrong, but I try to kind of just let things happen and evolve the way they're supposed to evolve. I try not to like set a certain timeline for myself because I feel like that just stresses me out even more. And I mean, I think about the past 5 years of my life and some of the opportunities that have come up, and like they were great opportunities, but I would have never planned for them or have expected them. So I mean, I would say my goal though is like every year, my word of the year this year is impact. So that's been really important for me to live up to that, and be able to make a big impact on not only my own clients but also build up my social media presence, because I think there's a lot of value in that long term, and having a big social media presence that can help me in my field to bring in more clients or just have a wider reach. And there's so many things out there nowadays that I could potentially do with a large audience on social media, such as, launching like a certain guide or whatnot, and, being able to monetize on that. So, um, but my goal is every year to be able to increase like my income. I try not to give myself like an exact number, but I do try to see growth there every year. And then also just continuing to make a bigger impact on my client load. And then, like I said, social media has been a big priority of mine with my YouTube channel, with my Instagram. And I know that's not a very specific goal, but I just really want to continue to grow in all of those different ways every year, and then kind of just see where it takes me. Cause I try not to just like have these times like stamps for myself, because I feel like that just stresses me out even more. If I'm like, okay, in 5 years, I want to be making this much and doing this. Like, I feel like sometimes having those goals for yourself and being too strict with those can kind of put you in a box and almost limit you in a way, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. I mean, I think if you're on the right track. I mean, if you're focusing on your impact, all the other stuff will just fall into place.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yeah.
So I guess
That's
it's really like, you know, typically it's vanity metrics like likes and all that kind of stuff. But in your case, I think that's really or important metrics, because that's you want more viewers, more users, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Really,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
reflects the
Yeah.
impact you're making.
It
Mm-hmm.
does. Yeah. And Yeah, I think impact speaks volumes, and yeah, it's ironically my word of the year. I even have like a bracelet that says it. So yeah, that's important to me. And just like the social media, I feel like I said, there's a lot I could do if I continue to grow that. Just with certain things I could monetize on if I want. I try to refrain from being the person that's always just focused on like how much am I going to make, how much am I going to make, because like you said, I think if you're passionate about something and if your impact is very genuine and positive, the money just kind of it'll come
Mhm.
with time. And I feel like you can't just you have to focus on the impact and then the money will come rather than just focusing on the money, because I also feel like if you just focus on the money and the numbers all the time, it's a great way to feel very burnt out or just not as enthused about doing what you do.
Mhm.
I had another question.
Mhm.
So, being young and successful, have you thought at all about like an exit to what you're doing right now? And as an independent contractor, maybe it's a little bit difficult.
Mhm.
But have you given any thought to that at all?
Yeah, like are you talking about an exit, like doing something like different career wise, or like are we talking after like retirement?
I think more like if you were able to take what you have like and package it up in a business, let's say. And again, it's
Uh-huh.
probably a little difficult because you're an independent contractor, and I don't know exactly how
Yeah.
you're structured, but um, building something that you could sell, like an exit out of that, and then start something new, or
Yeah,
travel
yeah.
the world, whatever it
Yeah,
is.
yeah. And every once in a while, I have these thoughts, like especially if it's like a really, let's say it's a really hard week. Like if I'm having a really hard week, like don't get me wrong, I love my job, I love the people that I work with, but we all have, I think, in every job or every field of work, sometimes we have those weeks where you're just like, oh my god, like you're brain dead, or you feel like there's no more bandwidth that you have to give. So sometimes I'll have those thoughts of like, maybe I should try to work towards this so eventually I can like do this instead. So I have those thoughts sometimes, and I think that's why I'm so focused on really growing like my impact on my social media, like not only Instagram but YouTube is so big nowadays. I feel like I'm really trying to grow my platform there because I feel like there's so much potential. I mean, heck, I know people out there, not to say this will ever be me, but like people that literally make an impact or an income over just their YouTube videos. They make money from those and the brand deals that they do from that, or they just have a big enough platform on Instagram, TikTok, where they have these brand deals and they're monetizing their social media like that. So that's why I'm really focused on the social media growth, because I also am really big on having multiple income streams. Like I will never be somebody that just settles with one income stream. I like to have multiple. I mean, I obviously have my coaching, which is my full-time income, but I also have a couple of other sources of income through like part-time gigs or commission from like brands that I have affiliate links with. And I think that is so important because that also kind of provides me with a little bit of cushion as well. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's kind of where my mind went.
Yeah, no, 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 that's good. I mean, and has your accountant kind of helped you maybe in how you're structuring some of the things that you're doing at all, or not
In
really? Or
terms of like my different avenues of work, like he doesn't really help me with like he doesn't really get into asking me like what I'm doing and like different ideas for monetizing things differently or anything like that, but he does help me with like we have talked about like does help me with investing and also talking like far in the future with like retirement and setting myself up for success with that way I can start thinking about that now, because I also feel like that's a thing that a lot of like Gen Zers or even millennials nowadays that are like, we'll say influencers, so people like on social media making money. I feel like one of the things you always hear about is they're not even thinking about saving for retirement or anything like that. So that is something though that my accountant has like helped me with.
So, Lexie, before we wrap up, if people want to connect with you, how would they connect with you?
Yeah, so I
Your
would
social
say that
channels?
probably, yeah, the easiest place to reach me would be my Instagram. It's just Lexie Mate, so LexiemAIT. If you go there, I have like a link tree in my bio, and it can direct you towards my YouTube channel. So I also have had my YouTube channel for like think like almost like 2.5 years now. So I have quite a lot of videos on that. It's sometimes embarrassing to watch my first ones from like 2.5 years ago. But so yeah, you can find me on Instagram, and then that can kind of direct you to my YouTube channel or my coaching link if you want to find out more.
Great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, this has been amazing to be in. As you can see, we're together, Janelle and I, in person. I'm in Tampa
Yay.
instead of Boca, and so this has been amazing. And then
Yes.
this is my first time meeting Lexie. This is incredible. So
Yeah.
cool.
Oh, it's been so
Yeah.
great to like, yeah, meet you as well. Cause like I said, I always hear such great things about you. So it's nice to be able to like finally put a face to the name.
Well,
Yep,
thank you
absolutely.
so much for joining us today, Lex. We really
No,
appreciate you.
Thank
thank
you.
you guys. I really appreciate it.
All right. Until next time.